Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
The world has so much complexity to it. I want us all to be able to be as effective as we possibly can be. Well, so much friction and waste results from people arguing over something that they're not actually explicitly saying. So instead of arguing over the thing that's the proxy, you can have a meaningful conversation to align on the things that really matter. If you're trying to disrupt the status quo, then you will be taking risks, and a small number of those risks will pay very high returns.
That's Janice Fraser. She's a Silicon Valley veteran who has founded and invested in numerous winning startups. She's also led innovation and transformation projects at NASA, the White House, Procter & Gamble, and many other Fortune 500 companies. She's going to share 1, how to get to the root of any argument, 2, how to know if your decision is good enough, and 3, why a low consensus isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm Pete Mikaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Janice. Janice, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, me too. I'm excited to be chatting about farther, faster, and far less drama. And I'd love it if you could kick us off with a tale of a time you were enmeshed in a whole lot of drama and how things got turned around well.
Oh, boy. Well, honestly, life will throw drama at you no matter what. I mean, we've all just lived through a whole bunch of drama, whether it was the pandemic or what have you. So I've been through, let's say, 3 economic meltdowns in my professional life. So we had, going way back, we had 2000 when .com bust. I live in San Francisco, so the .com bust ruined everything. And then 2008 was another time of total, right? Everyone thought the sky was falling, and it was. I was raising money for a startup company that year. And I'll tell you, I had no idea how I was ever going to hold my head up again because, get heavy for a minute. In February, my father died. And then in May, my brother died. Same year. And then 3 months later, the economic meltdown happened. And here I have this team of people who have come to help me build this company. And there was not going to be any money. And I had to lay them all off and close the company. I handed back a check to one of my investors. It was a really hard time. And I was just crushed, and I thought I would never recover. I thought that, this is it. So my career's over. I was 30 something, 35, and my career felt like it was over. And you know what? You put one foot in front of the other, and you cry in your beer to your friends, and you keep going. And as an independently employed person, right, as a startup founder, I got a couple consulting gigs, and I connected with some friends, and I made some phone calls, and I reached out, and it took a lot of courage to stand up. And then I started another company. It was the best one I ever did. And I sold it to a bigger company, and careers were made and life was happy again. But when I say less drama, the world has so much complexity to it. I want us all to be able to be as effective as we possibly can be. Not in a hustle culture kind of, you got to work yourself to the bone kind of way, but I just think it should be easier to get more done because you never know what's going to happen. And there's enough drama coming from the outside, we don't have to make our own. So the idea of farther, faster, and far less drama is about just letting the easy things be easy, helping us to move with flow so that we have more resilience when the unexpected comes down the pipeline.
All right. Well, that sounds like some great outcomes we'd all love to have. Can you tell us any particularly surprising means by which this is done?
So I think that the surprise for a lot of people is how simple it all seems. I've found often my attention is grabbed by methods that feel easy to use, easy to repeat, easy to adopt and pick up. But then under the surface, they're hard to practice. It's kind of like you think about meditation. Well, what is meditation, right? So we all do yoga or whatever. And you think, I'm just going to sit and be quiet for a minute, and that's easy. But meditation is actually hard because you're doing it mindfully. So here's an example. Point A, point B. From the first job we have, we're taught about goal setting. You have to set a goal. If you don't set a goal, you're not going to get where you want to go. I absolutely believe that. And we have lots of ways to do goal setting. But no one's ever mentioned or taught, at least not for me, that you have to start with understanding where you are right now. And no one's given me a framework or a tool for understanding, here's where we are right now, so that we can all reach that goal together. So in business, you hear a lot of words like alignment or buy-in and, how do we get buy-in for something? And all of that is about, we want to get someplace together. So we want to reach that goal together. But let's say my team is, half of my team is in Denver, half of them are in Miami, and I need to get everybody to Albuquerque. Well, I live in San Francisco. If I give them driving directions from San Francisco to Albuquerque, my Denver and my Miami people aren't going to get there. We're not in the same place. So even though we know our goal, Albuquerque, we have to start by knowing, where are we together, right? What is our starting place? And so I've developed and adopted some techniques for defining point A and gaining alignment around point A. Where are we starting from? It goes like this: situation, complication, then question, answer. So the situation, we all need to get to Albuquerque. Complication, we're in different cities starting out. Question, how do we get there? Okay, now we can tell the answer. So situation, complication, question, answer. I did not develop that. That was developed by this wonderful woman in the 60s. Her name is Barbara Minto. I think she's an unsung hero. She was in the first graduating class of women coming out of the Harvard Business School. So she was in the first graduating class of women. And she went on to work at McKinsey Consulting and really defined how they do strategy communications. It's called the Minto Pyramid Method. So situation, complication, what is true right now? And what makes this moment complicated such that it's work to achieve our goal, our point B. So point A, point B thinking can help you have better meetings. It can help you with your project planning. It can help you manage your career. It has helped me be a better, parent, partner, human. So point A, point B thinking, super, super simple and straightforward. But you avoid so much drama if you just take a moment and say, are we all driving from Denver to Albuquerque? No, some of us are in Miami.
Okay. So we talked about driving from different locations to Albuquerque. Could you share with us how this situation, complication, key question, answer stuff can unfold in a real life situation and be useful for folks?
Sure. Well, there's an example that I like to use because it's so relatable. I started a company with 7 founders. This is going back 20 years. So pro tip, if you're going to be a startup founder, don't have 7 partners. That's too many people. And we started that company at a time when our service offering was in great demand. And so we had more, it was a services company. We had more inbound interest than we could possibly handle. And I was the CEO and lead salesperson of this company. And I was just drowning. Like our close rate was really high. And, others were involved in, sales meetings here or there. But for the most part, I was kind of running the process. And I went to the partners and I was like, I need to buy a printer, $300. We were an all virtual company. So they didn't really see that I was drowning, but we were an all virtual company. And I said, I just need $300 to buy a printer. Are we all cool with that? And I'll tell you, we argued for 10 minutes for 6 months over whether to buy a stupid $300 printer. It was excruciatingly painful.
10 minutes for 6 months, like 10 minutes a meeting for
10 minutes at our partner meeting every Tuesday because it was on the agenda. So here I am like clawing my eyes out. I'm like, just let me buy the printer. And honestly, if I had it to do over again, I would have just bought the printer.
And you're the CEO with 6 partners.
Yeah. But we were equal partners, CEO was a role, I didn't get to wave my magic wand. Anyway, the problem there was that I had framed it up. So the situation was, I did not define the situation for my partners very well. I asked the wrong question. And I asked the wrong question because I hadn't teed up what is the situation and what is the complication. The situation is lots of inbound interest. The complication is I was having trouble keeping it all straight and juggling all of the piece parts. The question that I should have brought to my partner is, how can we support this level of sales without burnout forever? I have a suggestion, right? The suggestion is, Suggestion is other people should be participating. Suggestion is, I want a printer. Suggestion is whatever. And so the framing of the question led to the wrong debate. That's it.
So the framing of the question was just like, Janice wants a printer just because you want one.
Yeah. Janice wants a printer because she's a prima donna, right? Like whatever the story was that they were telling themselves in their head, rather than how can we make our sales operation more sustainable? And probably there were 2 or 3 other things that could have been done to make it a much more sustainable operation.
So this is so fascinating to me. What sorts of objections does one hear to I want $300 to buy a printer?
So we were a consulting company. So it was a low margin business. And I mean, this is me with my business person's hat, analyzing why people were doing what they were doing, which is always easier in hindsight than in the moment. And literally, like, one person was highly motivated by wanting to be a paperless company, right? Absolutely, from a philosophical standpoint, they were just simply opposed to printers, whatever. Another person literally said the words, 1/7 of that money is mine. Yeah, right?
You could have 1/7 of the printer when we're done with it.
You could have like 1/7 of $300 is not going to make or break you. But people are motivated by different things, right? Some people thought that we just shouldn't need it. We didn't have an office because we were an all virtual company. And, we're going to put a printer in one person's office. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know. These are dumb things. Like I said, like none of this makes any sense in retrospect.
Well, it is dumb. And yet I think it is richly instructive for us to dig into this in incredible detail, which might sound odd, but it's like in all of our organizations, there's dumb stuff that's going on.
And it's so human. It's just so human. Everyone's point of view here was legitimate to them.
And so thusly, if you'll indulge me to go in tremendous detail about this printer discussion, I think it can be illustrative for us all. So your opening was just, hey, I want a printer, as opposed to sharing how that could be an enabler. If you could, you gave us an example of that, hey, this will enable the sales and such. Could you spell out that pathway for how having that printer will enable the sales team to be more effective?
Sure. So the sales team, remember, so at this point, it was an 8-person company. We had employee number 1. So we had 7 co-founders, so equal partners in a partnership, and 1 employee, and no professional salespeople. Like I was the sales lead, and we had a couple of other partners of those 7 were participating in sales operations based on me setting up meetings, inviting them to the meetings. And so we had all this inbound interest, and I was spending as much time on our losses as our wins. And you can imagine I've got, let's say, 4 to 6 customers at any one time running through the sales process with 4 to 6 participants on the customer side, right? So now you're at 24 to 40 people, humans that I'm keeping track of in my mind, that I'm interacting with. So I've got 40 people living in my head, as many as, right? Living in my head all the time on a rotating revolving door basis. How do I keep that straight? And so for me, what I wanted was to have kind of a stack of folders, physical folders, where my most important, most recent notes were on top. And so for me, I would be on a sales call and I would type. At the time, I was doing this myself, and I would summarize that stuff, and I would want to print that out so that the most relevant information was always at the ready, so that if I needed it, I could context switch simply through physical manipulation of stacks of paper. So that's what I wanted.
Understood. So you just got to print the notes so I could stick them in folders and move them around. That's what I want.
I just needed a way to keep my brain straight. My brain was coming out my ears.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And so then, but you didn't offer that kind of context or path. It was just sort of like, hey, I want a printer. Can I just get a printer? And you probably didn't think it was going to be that hard. That's $300. I need a printer. Can we just do that? Okay, cool. Oh, we can't. Oh,
exactly. I thought it was a trivial ask.
So I had to bring the big guns, all right, in terms of laying out the pathway. So did you ever get that printer, Janice?
I did eventually get the printer. And, like I said, if I had to do over again, I wouldn't ask permission. I would just go buy the printer.
Yeah. The receipt is in the reimbursements. We're going to fight about it now? Well, so we already got the printer.
Yep. Live and learn.
All right, lovely. So I think that is instructive in terms of if we frame up the situation, complication, key question, and answer in a way that is resonant for the different stakeholders and the different things that they value and care about, that's really cool. And then that's a compelling story. Like if I have this printer, we are going to significantly increase the revenue that can come through this because I am in some ways a bottleneck as the single sales professional in the midst of overwhelming demand. There we have it. All right. Well, that is just one of many tools that you share in your book. Can you lay out a couple more with us? You say you've got one tool to rule them all. It's a 2x2. What's this one?
This is another one that if you've done any work time in consulting companies, you'll recognize it. We call it the 2x2. It goes by many names, and it's just, I think of it as a virtual or physical sorting grid. And the way that I prefer to use it is at a blank wall. I literally stand at a wall and I take blue painter's tape and I make a big plus sign, right? So there are 4 quadrants. And the way that I organize it is a little different than kind of you may have heard of before. I choose 2 different criteria, one for each axis. And on the vertical axis, it's whatever the criteria is an obvious yes, no. Is it important? Is it not important? If it's not important, I don't want to think about it. Find whatever my criteria that's a yes, no. I put that top to bottom. Yes on top. And then on the horizontal axis, I think of what is the criteria that is a yes, maybe, right? So, and I put the yes on the side, on the right side, and the maybe on the left. And if you construct your 2x2 sorting grid this way, you can take whatever your ideas, your options, you can plot them into these 4 quadrants based on, from one perspective, this is an absolute yes, but for another perspective, it's not, I'm not sure, right? So I think of easy, hard. So let's say you're building software, right? This is a common, you have 20 product features that you know would be great additions, or you think would be great additions, right? That everyone has requested. So a product manager has the job of prioritizing which ones we're going to build and not build. Well, from one perspective, it's easy to do, but from another perspective, it's not that important. It doesn't help the user or the business at all. So you've got easy, but unimportant. Well, that's going to fall down to this one quadrant, this bottom right quadrant. And anything that falls in the bottom right quadrant, this is the stuff I call seductive distractions. From one perspective, it is, yes, it's easy to do. From another perspective, it's a no. It's not important. Why would you bother? You would be shocked to know how many unimportant things end up in the product backlog and waste your time, waste your developers. And so these are the things that cause people to argue. Imagine that you're in a product prioritization meeting and you don't have a tool like the 2x2 that makes this very obvious that there's a no. You could easily get into a 30, 50-minute discussion, argument, debate about whether or not to include this feature. Well, it'd be easy to do. We should just throw it in there. But you shouldn't do it because it's not important. And so what a tool like this does is it puts the real depth of conversation on what are the decision criteria that we agree to. So rather than having the real conversation be, should we build this feature? That's the wrong question. The right question is, how should we choose which features to build? Well, let's only build the ones that are important. Okay, that sounds like a no-brainer. Okay, let's only build the ones that are important. So now if you're using this 2x2 diagram, this sorting grid is what I call it, then you're only going to have a debate about the ones that are an obvious yes from one perspective, but a maybe from another perspective. So you eliminate 75% of the discussion required because it's just so obvious the right thing to do.
Intriguing. So what's distinctive about this is one of the axes is pretty much binary. And so it's like, that's it.
I try.
Yep. Nobody, almost no user cares about this feature. Ergo, it's not important. So we just don't even need to worry our pretty little heads about it for a minute, not even a minute. So you can get right into it. Now, can you share with us some other contexts where this can be illuminating?
We use this in pretty much every aspect of life. I'm not kidding.
What should I eat for lunch? Is it delicious?
Is it delicious? Do I have the materials? Can I make it? Right. We've done 2x2s for everything from kind of disruptive strategy at very, very large companies, or actually I did this with the Navy SEALs Training Command. So I taught this, I led a workshop where I could not actually physically see any of the 2x2s that they were creating. I simply coached them through the steps and answered their questions as they went because it was a highly secure environment. Yeah, so it can apply to any situation where there are many choices, and you have to be able to reveal which choices make sense and which ones do not. And so you have, in the preparation for one of these kind of high stakes facilitations, I work with my clients to figure out what is the body of ideation that we want to do. What is the range of ideas that we want to generate, or thoughts that we want to elicit from our participants? And then what are the choice criteria that will help us to know which ones are the correct ideas to move forward with and which ones we let go of? And usually I can find a way to layer in 3 or 4 different criteria. So it could be importance, easy, hard, urgency, what have you. And so if we want to go from a wide range of ideas represented down to, let's say, 4 or 5 things that we intend to do, that we're actually going to do, in 1 hour, I can get 20 people to generate 200 ideas and come down to 6 using this 2x2 method. And the way that you do it is you say, all right, I'd like everyone to come up with 10 ideas, 1 idea per Post-it note. And in 10 minutes, you've got 200 ideas. And then you spend the next 50 minutes reducing that from 200 to 100 to 50, right? And we do that using the 2x2.
All right, that's cool. And I think it's nice because you really put a spotlight on what are the criteria that we're using here. And if that is left beneath the surface, poor criteria could rule the day. It's easy. It's fun. I'm really just interested in this kind of project. It seems cool. And so I was like, all right, well, let's note, well, what's the goal here? Is the goal just for you to enjoy yourself? Or is the goal more of an economic profit-minded kind of a thing? And so then you can recognize whether it seems cool and fun and easy and interesting is a valid criterion that we should utilize here, or if we should say, oh, I guess we actually have to be disciplined grown-ups and put our personal preferences to the side in this particular context.
Well, so much friction and waste results from people arguing over something that they're not actually explicitly saying. So we end up with these the friction and the waste and the slowness often is the result of a proxy argument, right? You're arguing over something on the surface, but really there's something underneath that's more of the issue. And if you could just have that conversation, you could resolve it. So for instance, you could say, one of the yes/no axis is, does it cost more than $100 or not? If it costs more than $100, that's an obvious no, because we're broke. You see? So instead of arguing over the thing that's the proxy, you can have a meaningful conversation to align on the things that really matter.
That's super. And I'm curious, do you have any favorite words or phrases or means of going deeper there? Because if folks aren't surfacing their real concern, they may very well feel kind of sensitive about it. How do you recommend we go there?
I think a lot about what are the prompts. So when we ask a question that inspires people to come up with new thinking, that's what I call a prompt. I actually think a lot about my prompts. I craft them very deliberately because I want to elicit information from the people that I'm collaborating with, right? So putting this back in a work context, what we're talking about here is collaboration to make progress. And when I write the prompt, I'm thinking about what is the underlying question again, we're back at point A, right? What is the underlying question that will help us orient honestly in the present moment? And that's why I ask questions like, how might we recognize the right thing to do? What are the things that matter most in making this selection? And I value those conversations. And sometimes it can feel, to people who aren't familiar in working with me, it can feel a little bit slow at first. But then the wrap up happens so easily that we make up for all that time. So If we spend 10 minutes having a conversation about what are the decision criteria, how will we recognize something that is the right answer? We're going to get our heads on straight together, and that's going to make it easier for us to recognize the right path forward, the right thing to do.
Lovely. Okay. Well, so you mentioned this waste. In your book, you highlight 2 pernicious kinds of waste. It sounds like we hit one. What's the other?
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to decision making, there are really 2 big ways that we waste. There's the kind that happens before the decision is made and the kind that happens after a decision is made. So before a decision is made, we end up with these slow decisions, and what it sounds like is, they're never going to make a decision. We've been talking about this forever, 6 months to talk about a freaking printer. Are you kidding me? So when a decision is taking a really long time, it's often because we've set the wrong kind of standard. And it's like, is this the right thing to do? Is this the best decision? Do we all agree? Those 3 sentiments all set this very, very high standard for the quality of decision and the amount of support that the decision has, right? And what that leads to is deliberation. So that's how you get extensive talking. So with the printer example that we talked about earlier, it was, do we all agree this is the right thing to do? Is it really necessary for 7 people to have complete agreement and that it is unequivocally the right thing to do? No, this does not rise to that level of importance. Compared to do we all agree it's the right thing to do to pull the plug on grandma? Okay, now we should probably all have consensus and we should all know that it's right, unequivocally. So that's the first kind of waste, is setting the wrong standards for the quality and alignment of our decision. After a decision is made, the other kind of waste is the waste that happens if a decision is like a snap decision that's made by fiat or that's made by gut instinct. Have you ever been on a call and on a Zoom meeting and you're watching all 25 talking, all 25 heads, and a decision is made and you can just see the looks on their face? They're going to go back to their desk and do whatever they want because they don't agree with whatever's, but nobody's going to say anything, right? So if a decision is made in too cavalier a fashion without sufficient attention being paid to building support and depth of understanding, then what you end up with is decisions that are reversed, or they're reversed and nobody talks about it. So now there's chaos. And what happens there is that you erode trust and belief in the quality and nature of the decisions that get made in your organization. And so that breeds resentment and lack of trust and a lot of churn and people doing things in conflict with one another because person A doesn't believe in it. So they're going to go off and do their own thing. Person B is going to do the same thing, but without talking to person A about it, right? So you end up with this sort of entropy, chaos type situation. So what we want instead is to think about decisions as what could a middle ground be? And I asked 2 questions. One, can we all live with it? Because if you can't live with it, that's important to know, right? If your lawyer is I cannot live with that, that exposes us to too much risk. That's super important information. So can we all live with it is a really helpful thing to ask. And does it move us toward our point B? Does it obviously help us make progress? If a decision is something that everyone can live with that obviously makes progress, it's probably a good enough decision.
That's nice in terms of good enough, as opposed to striving eternally for optimal universal acclaim by consensus.
Right.
May be a fool's errand in certain contexts.
Right. I just can't. I can't even. It really drives me nuts when people are debating as if continuing to talk would actually give us new insight. Sometimes we need to just stop talking and move forward.
Okay. Well, I like that. There's a time and a place where we want to raise the bar. I think about my conversation with Greg McEwen here in terms of essentialism. In terms of if you're clearing out your closet, might this ever be useful someday? Is a very low bar, and you will not get rid of very much stuff. Just about everything might be useful someday. Versus a Marie Kondo question, does this spark joy? Okay, now there's a very high bar. Not a lot of things are going to go there. And so here we're sort of playing it in reverse. It's there's a time when we want to have a very high bar for this decision and the consensus and everyone jazzed about it. And then there's a time where we should have a lower bar. And there's a little bit of an art of leadership there in terms of making that determination for where this falls along the continuum.
Well, you mentioned the spark of excitement. And one of the things that keeps us in a really boring middle ground is not being willing to take risks. And sometimes I think when we start to see organizations shifting how they frame up decisions, do we all agree this is the right decision to make? Like, if we all agree it's the right decision, we're never going to take any risks. I made a highly controversial decision at one point in my career. Again, I was leader of a company. It was a small company, but it was tiny but mighty. And we made a product and we ended up selling it to Google within a year of developing the product. It was such a cool outcome. And shortly after the transaction was closed, we returned a nice big check to all of the, shareholders in the company. Everyone was excited. One of the shareholders was very upset and said that it was the worst decision the company had ever made. The worst decision the company had ever made because it put us at such risk. And it really landed with me because I was feeling so proud of what we had accomplished. And I was so pleased with the decision-making acumen of the board of directors that allowed us to take that decision, even though one of the shareholders was so risk averse. Because if we all have to agree that something is unequivocally the right thing to do, we'll never do anything bold. So I'm really proud of that product and that set of decisions and that way of bringing something new to market and helping everyone make good enough decisions that kept the company safe enough that we could take a calculated risk.
Well, Janice, that's really a beautiful perspective that you have as you reflect on this, because I think myself and others with some people-pleasing tendencies might look back on that and sort of wonder, I don't know, is that person right? And did we make the wrong call after all? Whereas you said, I love the fact that we went after this and one person was really upset. That's really cool of us. I love that perspective.
Well, and I mean, honestly, he took home a check for $400,000. Dude was fine. I'm not happy that he was upset. I'm happy that we were able to have a vision and move forward even without consensus. So there was some research done about the best venture capital investment decision-making. And what turned out to be true was high conviction, low consensus led to the best outcomes in venture funds. So that means that at the partner table, all the people that are, sitting around debating whether or not we should invest in XYZ company, what you needed to really have good outcomes was somebody had to see outrageous potential, outrageously positive potential. And even though everyone couldn't see it, if somebody saw that there was outrageously possible potential, then there was a capacity that potential could be realized. So high conviction, but low consensus means that it took a leap of faith to believe in it. And I look at the challenges that we have as a planet right now, right? Whether it is war in multiple places or economic uncertainty, high inflation, climate change, political divisiveness, these are really big challenges. This generation, I think a lot about. My son is 22, my daughter's 35. So she's peak millennial, he's peak Gen Z. And I think about these young professionals that are coming into the workplace, and we need them to be bold. We need them to help us through some really difficult challenges. And so I want us to embrace high conviction, low consensus opportunities to explore big leaps forward in our culture, in our world.
It's intriguing that low consensus is advantageous. That is better than high conviction, high consensus. And can you unpack this pathway for me a little bit more? Is it that it's because of VC funds, and VC funds tend to prosper when they have a few bets that pay off massively, as opposed to the majority of their bets do pretty well.
They don't tend to, they only prosper.
Yeah, that's the way of the VC fund, as opposed to a mortgage lender. It's a different risk game.
I'm going to say it's not just the way of VC funds. It is the way of anything innovative. actual innovation, all innovation across, and this is something that I spend a lot of time looking at, the numbers are in, right? The math works. If you're trying to disrupt the status quo, then you will be taking risks, and a small number of those risks will pay very high returns. And I don't just mean financially, I mean in whatever direction. A lot of the organizations that I work with are like, I work with the Air Force, right? Like, these are not necessarily profit-making contexts. It's about creating disruptive results. And the thing about disruption, and I mean this in the sort of business school sense of disruption, like there's a guy, Clayton Christensen, who developed disruption theory. The thing about it is that it's a fundamentally optimistic act, right? Our innovators, whether they're economic innovators, political innovators, they are imagining a world that is different and somehow better. And that imagination, we need to have ways and methods for harvesting the insight and imagination of people who imagine better and who are willing to wrestle with the status quo in order to make improvements in the world.
Yeah. And so I guess in a way, low consensus is in a way an indication of the innovativeness of the thing. Because if everyone said, yeah, that's a great idea, everybody all loves it. Well, odds are then if everyone feels that way, that's probably already been done. Or it is so obvious that it is not disruptive.
Well, if it's so obvious and it is disruptive, there's some reason that it's not been done. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm just thinking for listeners, like the takeaway is, hey, everyone thinks this is a terrible idea, but I'm really gung-ho about it. And Janice said that's exactly what I want. Is that the takeaway, or how should we view high conviction, low consensus?
So it's not I want, it's what if this were true? How good would it be? The framing, again, is what is the framing? If this were true, how good would it be? And then what would we need to learn in order to find out whether it's true, whether it's possible? And that's where you get things like, there are terms like MVP, what is the smallest thing you can do to test out the critical path idea, that kind of thing. So it's not, I believe in this, therefore I'm going to shove it down everybody's throat. It's, I believe in this. What's the smallest thing we can do to figure out whether it's right? So it comes with a degree of humility, right? That high conviction doesn't mean blind faith. Conviction means I've seen some indicators that there's real potential here. Not everybody sees it yet, but I do.
One sponsor to check out is Harvard Business Review. This brilliant magazine, published at hbr.org, is the leading destination for smart management thinking. Fun fact, HBR has been mentioned in 108 episodes of the show. That's because HBR has great stuff that comes up often. They've got explainer videos, podcasts, real-world case studies, and much more. I think of HBR each night that I put on my special orange glasses. Their article, Will Blue Light Glasses Improve Your Sleep?, revealed that those who wore them reported better sleep and a 7% improvement in work performance as compared to those who wore the sham glasses. So I cite HBR anytime anyone tells me that I look silly wearing them. Now, much of HBR's content is available for free when you sign up at their site. Subscriptions that get you unlimited content cost $10 a month. If you visit hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME, you can save 10% off of that subscription. Again, to save 10% off of your HBR subscription, go to www.hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME. And big thanks to our sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. NerdWallet.com, whom I love on these sorts of matters, gives Acorns a whopping 4.7 stars and says, quote, if you want to make the most of your spare change, there's no better place to do that than Acorns. Head to acorns.com/awesome or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. And we got a legal disclaimer here. It may not be representative of all clients. Tier 1 compensation provided. Compensation provides an incentive to positively promote Acorns. View important disclosures at acorns.com/awesome. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns' fees before investing. Acorns Advisors LLC, Acorns, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com. One sponsor to check out is Storyworth. Whenever I'm thinking about meaningful Father's Day gifts, Storyworth leaps to mind. Storyworth helps you preserve precious memories and stories from your father for years to come. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick, such as, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? I personally love the prompt so much that I have refreshed Storyworth's questions page many times looking for more. Storyworth makes the writing process super quick and easy. All your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story, and then you get a quick copy of that. And after a year of this fun, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Families love Storyworth so much, they've got 25,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot and have millions of stories preserved. So give all the fathers in your life a unique, heartfelt gift they'll all cherish for years. Storyworth. Right now, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/awesome. That's storyworth.com/awesome to save $10 on your first purchase. All right. Well, can you share with us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
So there's actually a quote from my book that I sit with a lot and I pay a lot of attention to. And it goes something like this. We no longer believe in work-life balance. It's all just life. And what we want is to make it a life filled with confidence, security, love, and meaning. And since publishing the book last April, that quote's on page 11, I have realized that that might be the defining quote for me in this book. And it's not because I believe in hustle culture and I think that you should, have no boundaries between work and the rest of your life. It's actually kind of the opposite. It's more that I want life to infect your work. Who we are at work, what happens to us at work, the pains and joys that we experience at work, the kinds of decisions we make at work, they alter who we are as people. And if we can be really attentive and mindful to being ourselves wherever we go, we will end up building a life that is so much more fulfilling and satisfying. And if we have a planet filled with people who have fulfilling, satisfying lives, I believe we're going to make better decisions on that global geopolitical kind of scale. So I think that is the thought that I would want to leave people with, is that you're allowed to have a life filled with confidence, patience, security, love, meaning. These things really do matter, and they matter at work as much as at home.
And a favorite tool, something that helps you be awesome at your job?
Well, my favorite tool that helps me be awesome at my job is Google Docs, the Google Suite. I have a long list of tools. And the one that I could not live without is G Suite. And I'm surprised by how few people notice how powerful it is. You could do everything on G Suite.
All right. And a favorite habit?
When I get up in the morning, I sit for 1 hour and do something I love.
Mm-hmm. For example?
Usually I drink coffee and I read a book and I pet my cat in a favorite chair with the curtains open and the sun shining in. Yeah, but I spend 1 hour every morning doing something I love. Sometimes it's social media, let's be honest.
All right. Is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? You hear them quote it back to you often?
Yep. Figure out the truth, figure out what's true, and make it a good thing.
All right. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
JaniceFraser.com. JaniceFraser.com.
All right. And you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Well, the call to action is I would love it if you would take a look at the book. If it looks interesting to you, give it a try. I read the audiobook. So if you want to hear me talking in your ear, that's the best way to do it.
All right. Janice, this has been fun. Thank you. I wish you much speed and little drama.
Thank you so much, Pete.
I really appreciated Janice's story about the printer, and I went into a lot of detail there, even though that seems super mundane, because I think it's quite real. That a lot of times we are arguing about the thing that's not really the thing and not conveying what's really going on, what's really at stake, why it really means something. And we're fighting about other stuff, and it's really good to courageously take a breath and to see, what are we really talking about here? What are the values, the issues that are at play? Let's talk about those things, and then we're probably really going to get somewhere. If you'd like a summary write-up of this conversation and all conversations I have with guests at How to Be Awesome at Your Job, please sign up for the Gold Nugget email list. You can find those front and center at awesomeatyourjob.com. And if you'd like the particular show notes and transcript associated with this episode, you can find that at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP942. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full-text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.